Hello everyone, welcome to Law Excellence Daily Hindu News Analysis. Today we will be looking into some important articles that appeared on 20th June 2020. Law Excellence IAS is coming with new courses both for prelims and mains as well as optionals. For optionals, we will have a revision and enrichment course which will be starting from 22nd of June. And we also have an essay module and ethics module which will be starting in the next week. So for any queries, please call to these numbers given below. Okay. Today's personality for discussion is DK Ravi. So he was an 2009 batch IAS officer of Karnataka cadre. In his very short stint of service, he was known for his brave and courageous decisions. Now he was posted, his first posting was the assistant commissioner in Gulbarga. Then he served as a deputy commissioner of Kolar district in Karnataka. And in his stint as deputy commissioner of Kolar district, he became a public figure due to his functioning as a pro-people administrator and launching of various innovative reforms with respect to revenue matters. Particularly, he started Podi Adalats. What are these Podi Adalats? So, Podi Adalats is nothing but a forum, a judicial forum where revenue matters are being discussed. And this became so popular that Karnataka state government implemented this Podi Adalats throughout the state. And also, he took various steps to protect encroachment on government lands, and also he tried his best to prevent illegal sand mining that was happening in Kolar district of Karnataka. And later he was posted as additional commissioner of commercial taxes. So during his stint as additional commissioner of commercial tax, he took various brave decisions which some argue that costed his life. What are the decisions which he took as additional commissioner of commercial taxes? For example, he prepared a list of 50 tax defaulters in the state of Karnataka, and he ensured and he promised that he will be collecting at least some 1,000 crores from these tax defaulters. And because of these decisions, he got lot of threat calls from various quarters. And of course, he was partly successful. He collected almost some 200 plus crore. But in 2015, for unknown reasons, he committed suicide, and there is a lot of suspicion on his suicide. See, in his very short tenure of service, he started his journey in 2009 and he committed suicide in 2015. Almost for 6 years in the service, he got lot of fame for his courage, commitment, and sincerity in his service. So this personality is an inspiration for many people, and we can also quote the contributions made by DK Ravi if a question is asked in ethics paper. As usual, our discussion is categorized into two types. One is deep and other one is TNA, targeted news analysis. In deep, we will be discussing those articles that appeared in the editorial pages of the Hindu. In targeted news analysis, we will be discussing those news items that appeared on the other pages of the Hindu. So we have given here the page numbers of Hyderabad and Bangalore edition of the Hindu. Please have a look into it. You can download the notes in PDF format through a link given in the description box below this video. And every day we will be conducting 10 MCQs daily current affairs quiz, and it will be opened at 9:30 p.m. and you can log into this elearn.lawx.in and you can give this test for free. The first article for discussion is the gross abuse of the Manipur mandate. See, the content given in this article is not that much important from examination point of view, but the issue which the article is trying to address is very much important. So what is that issue? It is anti-defection law, and this anti-defection law is there in news in the recent times for various reasons. So it is one of the hot topic which is very much important from both prelims as well as mains point of view. Now the article gives a list of events that happened in Manipur which are in contradiction to the letter and spirit of anti-defection law. Though these events are not that much important, but the anti-defection law and what are the various provisions in this law are important. But we will have a brief look what actually happened in Manipur. Now, in Manipur in 2017 elections, there was a hung assembly, and we all knew what is a hung assembly. Hung assembly is a situation where no particular party gets adequate majority to form government. That is what hung assembly. So, in the 2017 elections, Indian National Congress got 28 seats and BJP got 21 seats in the 60-membered House of Manipur. So how much majority they have to get? At least 31 seats. But no single party got. Now what happened? The state governor of Manipur, he invited BJP to form a government, though they got 21 seats. Now we all knew that the state governor have a discretionary power to call a particular political party to form a government, right? Now BJP, by using lot of tactics, it got support of National People's Party and other party like Lok Janashakti Party, and somehow it mobilized the support. And there are some people who left Congress and they joined BJP. Almost 8 MLAs they left Congress party and they have joined BJP. Is it a justification? Can they do it? See, they have won on a particular party ticket, and now after winning, how they can jump to another political party? It is completely subverting and undermining the constitutional and democratic principles, right? Now after that, Supreme Court and High Court intervened and lot of things have happened. These things are not that much important from examination point of view, but only important thing is that what is this anti-defection law? Okay, in Manipur context, the article is trying to discuss. Now syllabus mapping, it comes under GS paper 2, structure, functioning, conduct of business, powers and privileges of parliament and state legislature, because anti-defection law is applicable only for parliament and state legislatures. Okay, the issue is anti-defection law and the dimension is how party defection is happening in Manipur. Okay, now the learning objective is to know about the course of events happened in Manipur, though that is not that much important. And the second is to know about the 10th schedule to the Indian constitution. This is very much important from both prelims as well as mains point of view. Now we will look into anti-defection law. See, through the 52nd Amendment Act to the Constitution in 1985, this 10th schedule was inserted. And what is this 10th schedule? It lays down the process by which legislatures may be disqualified on grounds of defection. See, a legislature can be disqualified on various grounds, but 10th schedule only deals with those grounds of defection. For example, Representation of the People's Act, it also provides some sort of disqualifications. The Constitution also provides some sort of disqualifications, but the 10th schedule provides disqualifications only on grounds of defection. Okay, now who will be the final authority who will look into these disqualifications? As per this 10th schedule of the Constitution, it will be the presiding officer who is the final authority to take a call over these disqualifications. Now how you can establish that a person is defected from a particular party? Now one condition is if he voluntarily gives up his membership of the political party on which he won, that is one thing. And if he votes or does not vote in the legislature in contradiction to the direction given by the political party. And there are other grounds. For example, if a nominated member joins a party 6 months after he becomes a member of the legislature. See, the anti-defection law also provides for some exemptions. What are these exemptions? One exemption is that, see, a party could be merged into another if at least 2/3 of its party legislatures voted for this merger. So if 2/3 of its members are supporting merger, then they can go for it, and it won't attract any charges under this anti-defection law. Okay, for example, see the case of Praja Rajyam party that got merged with Indian National Congress. The members haven't attracted any disqualification under this anti-defection law. Why? Because it got a support of 2/3 of the party members, right? Now what is the controversy with respect to this anti-defection law? See, under this anti-defection law, the presiding officer is the final authority to take a decision. Yes or no? Yes, right? Now there is no prescribed time within which the presiding officer has to take the decision. And also, the courts can't intervene until the presiding officer takes a decision. They can only intervene after the presiding officer takes a decision, because the decision of presiding officer is subjected to judicial review. But what is happening is, see, most of the times the speaker is from the ruling party and he is not interested to take decision on the matters of disqualification. So this is one controversy which is happening in the recent times. Okay. See, these are some decisions taken by the Supreme Court in respect to Manipur Congress MLA T. Shyam Kumar, who switched to BJP. Now, what Supreme Court told? See, it sets 3 months as the outer limit for speakers to conclude disqualification proceedings. I have told before that there is no prescribed time limit as of now, but Supreme Court came with a 3 months outer limit. Now, it also recommends that Parliament should amend Constitution to set up a permanent tribunal to decide cases. Now, this tribunal can be headed by a retired Supreme Court judge or High Court Chief Justice. But what is the duty of this tribunal? It looks into this anti-defection matters. Now, the Supreme Court emphasized that ensuring purity of anti-defection law under 10th schedule is vital to democratic functioning. This is an important observation which Supreme Court made in this MLA T. Shyam Kumar case. Okay, these things you can quote when a question is asked. For example, if the question is asked how we can improve anti-defection law and all those type, now you can quote these recommendations given by the Supreme Court. Okay. The next article for discussion is crisis in the peninsula. Now the article mentions about a conflict between United States, North Korea and South Korea. On the face of it, it looks it is not important from examination point of view. But if things goes worse here, obviously it will have an impact on India too. Then surely it will be an important topic for UPSC to ask a question. So we will see what is this crisis and what is this demilitarized zone. Recently, we knew this North Korea blown up a joint liaison office on border, and it also threatened to deploy troops along the demilitarized zone. Now we will see what is this demilitarized zone and why these tensions re-emerged now. And also we will be discussing about a Singapore summit where there was some sort of agreement that got achieved between United States and North Korea. So these are the things which we will look here. Now regarding syllabus mapping, it comes under mains GS paper 2 international relations, effective policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. And what is the issue? About Korean Peninsula, the issue is speaking about. Dimension is mostly US-Korean talks. The learning objective is to know about the reasons for the aggressive posture of North Korea, why North Korea is behaving in such an aggressive fashion. And the second learning objective is to know about the Singapore summit. This Singapore summit brought some sort of talks between United States and North Korea. So maybe UPSC can ask in prelims what is this Singapore summit is related to. Okay. Now we will see about this demilitarized zone. See, there is something called latitude 38th parallel. This 38th parallel is the line which forms the boundary between North Korea and South Korea. And see this orange color line, this is what the demilitarized zone. What is this demilitarized zone? See, it is nothing but a buffer zone between North Korea and South Korea that was agreed as part of Korean Armistice Agreement. Okay, this was signed after the Korean War. Okay. Korean Armistice Agreement. Okay. Now, as part of this agreement, neither countries can deploy armed troops across this demilitarized zone. Now, what is happening right now is that now North Korea wants South Korea that it will be deploying troops along this demilitarized zone. What made the North Korea to take this decision? See, the deadline which the North Korea dictated to the US with regard to denuclearization talks got expired on December 31st, and further no progress have achieved with respect to this denuclearization. So this is one reason. The second thing is South Korea recently refused to crack down on anti-North Korea defectors who sent out propaganda leaflets via balloons across the border recently. So these are the two reasons which prompted North Korea to announce that it will be going to deploy troops in this demilitarized zone. Okay. Now in that context, we will be discussing what is this Singapore summit. See, the Singapore summit was held in 2018. Now as per this summit, North Korea in principle agreed to denuclearization. and in return for the lifting of American sanctions. This is what the outcome of this Singapore summit. But however, a little has been achieved, and United States is not showing that much interest in ensuring the outcomes that was agreed under this Singapore summit. We will look into the history of North Korea and South Korea at a glance. See, in 1904 and 1905, there was a war that was fought between Russia and Japan, and Russia got defeated, and Japan won this war. And after this, Japan occupied the Korean Peninsula. Now, what happened till World War II? The Korean Peninsula was under the control of Japan. But in World War II, we knew what happened. Japan got defeated. Now the northern part got allied with Soviet Russia, and the southern part got allied with United States of America. Now North Korea and South Korea, there's two different independent countries formed in 1948. And after that, a major important event that happened is Korean War, which was fought between North Korea and South Korea during 1950 and 1953. And after this Korean War, there was an agreement signed, which we have discussed before also, Korean Armistice Agreement. Okay, now according to this agreement, there is something called DMZ, demilitarized zone, that was formed between North Korea and South Korea. This red line is that DMZ. Now both the countries, they have joined United Nations in 1991. Then South Korea witnessed lot of progress and development, but this is not the case with North Korea. And North Korea went for a first nuclear test in 2006. The next article for discussion is China publishes virus genome data. See, recently China released the genome sequencing of the viral strain that is responsible for the recent corona outbreak in Beijing. Now it submitted the entire genome data to the World Health Organization, because in the recent times China was criticized for not being transparent. Now the recent genome data is based on 3 samples. 2 are from human and 1 sample is from environment. And also the data founded that the origin of the virus is in Europe. Now we will see the syllabus mapping. It comes under GS paper 3, Science and Technology, Awareness in Biotechnology. What is the issue? It is COVID-19, and the dimension is the genome of the coronavirus is being sent by the Chinese authorities to the World Health Organization. The learning objective to know about the genome of coronavirus. We will see what is this genome and what is this viral genomes. Okay. Now we will see what is this genome. Genome is nothing but the genetic material that is present in an organism. Now it can be a DNA genome or it can be of RNA. For example, in viruses we have RNA genome. Now what is the genome sequencing which the article is mentioning? See, it is nothing but just understanding the order of DNA nucleotides that are present in an organism's DNA. That is what genome sequencing is. So what we will get from this genome sequencing? By this process, we will get the genetic information and other characteristics of a particular organism. That is what the advantage of genome sequencing. Why people go for genome sequencing is to understand or to get some genetic information of a particular organism. Now the Chinese authorities, they have given genome sequence data of this coronavirus. Okay. Now what we will get of this genome data? See, based on this genome data, we can understand the nature of this coronavirus, so that we can develop a vaccine, and also we can develop other diagnosis treatments. Okay. Now the next article for discussion is International Atomic Energy Agency passes critical resolution against Iran. See, recently there was a resolution moved by European states which is asking Iran to allow IAEA inspectors to check 2 nuclear sites which they believe there was some sort of nuclear activity happened in the early 2000s. Now this resolution was opposed by Russia and China. Now more than this resolution, what is important for us from examination point of view is that what is the mandate of this international agency, Atomic Energy Agency? This is first thing. Second thing, what is this nuclear program with respect to Iran? These are the 2 things which we have to discuss. Now regarding syllabus mapping, it comes under GS paper 2, international institutions and their mandate, and also effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. Now, what is the issue? Issue is about Iran's nuclear program, and the dimension is there was a resolution passed demanding for access to IAE inspection. Now, the learning objective will be knowing about International Atomic Energy Agency and also to know about the Iran nuclear program. Now we will look into this International Atomic Energy Agency. See, it is a United Nations agency. Now the primary mandate of this organization is to promote safe, secure and peaceful use of nuclear technologies. Right now it has some 171 members, and India became a member to this agency in 1957. Its primary function is to promote and assist the research, development and practical applications of peaceful uses of nuclear technology. This is what the mandate of IAEA. Now we will look into this Iran's nuclear program. Now Iran's stint with nuclear technology started with United States. It is the United States who first supplied nuclear technology to Iran. Now Iran's nuclear program was launched somewhere in 1950s with the support of United States as part of this Atoms for Peace program. Now this program continued till this Iranian revolution that happened in 1979, and after this revolution the regime in Iran got changed. Now Western nations headed by United States, they opposed the new regime change that happened after Iranian revolution. Now what these Western nations have done, they stopped providing nuclear technological support and other assistance to Iran. Now in 1990s, Russia formed a joint research organization with Iran, providing Iran with Russian nuclear experts and technical information. And in early 2000s, it was identified that Iran is developing a nuclear bomb. Now this led to a series of sanctions that were imposed by Western countries on Iran. Now, however, in 2015, there was an action plan, joint comprehensive plan of action, that was signed between Iran and P5+1 countries. Okay. Now we will look into this joint comprehensive plan of action that was signed between P5+1 with Iran. Who are these P5 countries? They are permanent members of United Nations Security Council. Okay. Now according to this joint comprehensive plan of action, Iran agreed to eliminate its stockpile of medium enriched uranium, and also it agreed that it will cut its stockpile of low enriched uranium by 98%. And Iran also agreed for the next 15 years it will only enrich uranium up to 3.67%. See, this much of enrichment will not be sufficient to make a nuclear bomb. Now, and it also promised that it will allow regular access to IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. What it will get in return? In return, Iran would be getting a relief from sanctions that are imposed by United States. This is what the agreement. However, in 2018, US and Israel accused that JCPOA is a flawed agreement and it is not trying to restrict the nuclear enrichment program of Iran. Now in 2018, US pulled off this JCPOA, and in 2020, Iran also said that it will not be abiding by the conditions mentioned in the deal. This is what the present state of this joint comprehensive plan of action. The next article for discussion is power output declines steeply. Now we have seen in the recent times the impact of lockdown on each and every sector. Now the article mentions how this lockdown affected the power consumption across various states in the country. Especially it is focusing on the industrialized regions like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Delhi and Tamil Nadu, and the article is mentioning how these regions witnessed a sharp fall in power consumption. Regarding syllabus mapping, it comes under GS paper 3, issues related to growth and development, and also infrastructure, energy related infrastructure. And the issue is COVID-19 lockdown, and the dimension is impact of this lockdown on the power output. Now see, in general, there is a strong correlation between power consumption and economic growth. The more the power consumption, the more the economic growth. For example, see the Western countries. They have high per capita power consumption. And see developing countries like India and other less developed countries. these countries have low per capita consumption. So in Western notions of development, higher per capita consumption is seen as a sign of growth and development. Now we will see various sources of energy production. This is important for prelims point of view. See, out of the total energy that is being produced in India, 55.4% comes from coal. So Indian energy mix is mostly thermal dominated. Okay, this is one important observation. And next is hydro both large and small. Now this complete sector is considered as renewable energy sector, but coal is not a renewable sector. And see, wind, from wind we are getting 10.2% of energy, and solar we are getting around 9.4%. In exam, UPSC might ask to arrange these sectors in ascending or descending orders. Just have a look into this tabular column. Now we will see which is the sector that consumes more amount of energy in India. First is industry. Industry consumes almost 42% of energy that is being generated in India, followed by agriculture. Agriculture almost consumes 18% of energy. The last article for discussion is, now China embraces Bangladesh in trade. Now see, there is one theory which says that China is using its economic clout to influence small nations in South Asia. Now the content given in this article will be can be used to substantiate that statement. Okay, now what is this article trying to say is that recently China has announced a tariff exemption to almost 97% of Bangladeshi exports. Now what will happen if China provides exemptions, tariff exemptions to Bangladeshi products? Suppose if a product from Bangladesh is exempted from tariff, obviously it will be sold at lower price. When a product is sold at a lower price, what happens to the demand? The demand of that product will be increased. So due to reduction of tariffs, the Bangladeshi products will be having more demand in Chinese markets. Okay, this is what the advantage Bangladesh will get out of this policy. Now regarding syllabus mapping, it comes under GS paper 2, international relations, India and its neighborhood, and also effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. And what is the issue? China and Bangladesh, and the dimension is economic diplomacy. How China is using its economic diplomacy to bring various countries under its sphere of influence. Now the learning objective is to know about the economic diplomacy between China and Bangladesh. Now we will look into the prelims questions. Consider the following statements regarding anti-defection law. We have discussed this law, right? Now we will see what are the statements given here. It aims to bring party discipline in the democratic functioning of the country. True or false? Second, it creates a post whip. We know there is a post called whip, right? So this anti-defection law creates a post whip to ensure strict adherence to party policies and decisions. This statement looks so tempting, but you should know whether anti-defection law created this post called whip. Okay. The third statement, the presiding officer is the final authority to decide on defections whose decisions are not subjected to judicial review. Just try to focus on this statement. Now you will be getting an answer. Please post the answer in the comment section. And we will see the second question. Countries and the river boundaries between them. The first one is North Korea and South Korea. River is Amur River. See, we have shown that map. North Korea and South Korea. 38th parallel, demilitarized zone. Do we have any river there? Just recollect. The second one is France and Germany. What is the river that separates between France and Germany? Rhine River. USA and Mexico, Colorado River. Now if you can eliminate, because we have discussed this, if you can eliminate that, you will get an answer. Okay, now please post your answer in the comment section. So with that, we have done today's discussion. Thank you one and all.